I think speed is the greatest expression, or one of the greatest expressions of strength. Guys don't understand how important strength is to speed. They need to be stable to maintain those things. The measurement part for me was more about them doing the things that were going to help them to support what they're doing on the field. Because if you're testing all the time, you're not training. We would speed squat. I would even deadlift, because acceleration with a deadlift, the intention from the bottom is to move it as hard and as fast as you can now. Are they developing power, or are they expressing it?
Today, my guest is Jesse Ackerman. Jesse has worked as a strength and conditioning coach for over 2 decades. So we're going to go through some of the different teams that you've worked with, or levels actually that we're going to work with. He's worked with basically every level that you can work with, from what was John Carroll, Division 3, Division 3, all the way up to the NFL, the XFL, and the Special Forces. Also works as a consultant.
Yes, sir.
With individual programming services. I'm not going to list them all, as we will touch on a lot of these as we go through the podcast today, but the visualization, the programming, speed mechanics, in season, off season. And the difference you guys are going to have with Jesse is a lot of the other coaches that I've had on have been purely just powerlifting or absolute strength based, right? Where the dynamics of periodization change just a little bit. Just a little bit when you're dealing with athletics as a whole, especially athletes that have vigorous in seasons and off seasons. So there's a big difference between that and other athletes we'll touch on as well. So I kind of broke this into different segments.
Yes, sir.
So we'll go into your early years. So I'm going to ask the same questions I still ask everybody else, because those formative years, say before you graduate high school, kind of looking back in hindsight, now that you're older, but not as old as I am. So that way it's not an insult, right? We can look back and say that kind of led to this and this and this.
Yeah.
And so you played football in high school and played in college as well. Backing up there, before middle school, what sports were you involved in?
So before middle school, I did all three. So I started football in 4th grade, and then I would play basketball, and then ran track. I was just a very active kid. So I grew up outside playing, Northeast Ohio. I describe where I grew up as a metropolitan suburb, houses right next door to you, like you can see through the other person's window. And there was always a ball outside, and that's sort of how I grew up, park right behind. So just very active.
When did you get serious about playing football?
I think when I started,
not when you're 4th grade. You know what I'm saying? There's a turning point somewhere.
When I it would definitely be like 7th grade.
Yeah.
And then 7th grade, you start looking at high schools. And in my area, the big thing was Catholic schools. So in Cleveland, you have St. Edward, Cleveland St. Joe's, now VASJ, Mentor Lake Catholic. So you had all those private schools that were really good at football. And so, I'd say 7th grade.
So when you say looking at high schools, you're looking at, you had a choice of different high schools?
Yeah, because, up in my neighborhood, I could have went to East Lake North, and East Lake North was a good high school. But if you wanted to play football, you wanted to go somewhere private to play, just the way it was.
All right. So through that time period, even into high school, was there a coach that stands out to you as being pivotal?
Yeah, I was a late bloomer as far as size and all that stuff, but my football coach, definitely John Gibbons. I think he's in the High School Hall of Fame. I would run through a wall for that guy. Loved him. The guy who has been probably my greatest anchor when I go back and think about it is a guy named Tim Armelli. And Tim was my wrestling coach. And I started late, halfway through my junior year. And, he just, that whole experience, it was very humbling because, I never wrestled. But it really, really woke me up to being humble, to working my ass off, and just a great man. Armel is a legend. I think he's in the High School Wrestling Hall of Fame in Ohio.
Was there anything that he said or any moment that kind of sticks out more than others?
I can give you, I'll give you an example, and I use this example a lot, Dave. So, we used to do these things called Sullivans, and they were just, line drills, like suicides, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, they were named after Mark, Mike, and John Sullivan, who all played at Ohio State. So we would do these things at the end of practice, and I would win. I was pretty fast. Like, that was my game, playing ball. I could run. So the one day, we're doing these, Sullivans, sorry. And, we kept going down, and it was a contest, who's gonna win, So, I lost.
Based on time?
Yeah, just based on the race. Like, they would have a coach at the end.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you want, you obviously want to win, compete.
Mm-hmm.
So, we had a great room. The Bex brothers, they wrestled at, Mark wrestled at Penn State. Brett wrestled at Indiana. I think he played football too, but we had just a bunch of great people. And, so, like, I ran track. I'm fast. I didn't win. I think it was Brett that won. And, everyone had to watch, stand around. And Brett, you're up. He had to run it by himself. And everyone's like, what the hell is this?
Mm-hmm.
And the point was, the work is the reward.
Mm-hmm.
The better you do, the more the more work you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
And I always think about that. He was just, he would say the right thing at the right time. And just really a good person. So
then you learn that harder work equals greater reward.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of the same experience in junior high with a wrestling coach. And my mom was late, and I hadn't won a match for like a year and a half or whatever it is. And started in our junior high was 7, 8, and 9, and then high school 10. It was a little weird, now I look back. And so my mom's late, so I'm just running the stairs because I'm bored, and lights are all out. She's late, like real late, like half hour late.
Yeah.
And Coach Mullins comes by, and I said, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm sick of fucking losing all the time, so I'm just gonna run. I'm just gonna work harder than everybody else. He says, if you work harder than everybody else, you'll never lose. And it's stuck, So then that became my thing, is running the stairs for 30, 40 minutes after everybody else had left, getting passes from the teachers in study hall to run the halls of the elementary school, and then started weight training as well, just on a universal machine. But then I started beating everybody, so it stuck, and that's why I like to go down that road, because I think many coaches get into coaching because of people that mentored them or inspired them or let them see they could be more.
Yeah.
And then it gets ingrained.
The other guy would say, Dave, I'd be remiss if I didn't. He recently passed away. His name's Dave Holian. So Dave was at St. Edward for a bunch of years, and he's the one who sort of transitioned me into a position change in high school. So I played D-end, and he was real, like, just a guy that believed in me. And I had a bunch of coaches like that.
Yeah.
Mike and John Sullivan, they were twins that played at Ohio State in the 80s, and they're buck wild. But they are, these guys, just the intensity they brought, it was fucking awesome,
mm-hmm.
So, yeah, just good guys.
Now, where did you play in college?
I went to Ashland. I started off at Ashland, and then I transitioned out of there, and I did well. I had this fixation with playing Division I, right? And as I reflect, that was probably the best decision I made because it got me into coaching. So I took a year off. I went to a JUCO. I didn't do good in school at Ashland. I actually got removed from Ashland. I was just obsessed with ball. I didn't care about school, you know. But I worked my ass off, got my associate's degree, which made me eligible. So I went to Pitt, and that's where, you know, I played for about a year. I played there for a season, and then I transferred to John Carroll.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you realize that you wanted to become a strength and conditioning coach? Because your undergrad degree was in education.
Yep. So I realized I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. I got invited down to work camps at the University of Texas. And I knew I wanted to coach. I didn't know necessarily I wanted to be a strength coach. But I had a good conversation with my friend Donnie Mabe, who's still there. He's the director. I don't want to undercut his title, but he's like Associate Athletic Director for Olympic Sports Performance. So Donnie and I had a conversation just off to the side, and he was talking about the reason he got into it. And part of it was family. He wanted to have a family. He didn't want to be on the road recruiting, you know? So that resonated with me because I wanted the same thing. And if I'm being really reflective, Dave, my mom growing up was an aerobics instructor. Mm-hmm. She was jazzercise, man. So it was like huge influence. Mm-hmm. So I would do that shit, never in tights, but you know.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yes, but
remember Alzado had this one that he had milk jugs with, like war with the weights or some shit like that with the music.
Awesome. It's fucking awesome.
It was stupid as hell, but I did
it. But I mean, so looking back, I lost some of my place there, but yeah, I mean, I go when I'm going back and I'm thinking about stuff like that. All those things sort of geared me towards it, but yeah, I don't know.
So through when you were at John Carroll, were you playing there or just coaching?
I played, yeah. So I played 2 years, and I ended up having a really good senior year. I was All-America there. Yeah, it was a great experience. I fell back in love with football.
Okay, you know? And that's where you G8 as a strength coach.
Yeah. So I took 1 year off. I didn't take a year off. I was student teaching, and so I was student teaching, and then I coached at Mentor Lake Catholic for a year. So I was the D-line coach. I helped a little bit with strength and conditioning. We won a state championship, which was cool. So yeah, that was my first exposure. But I had a deal with my coach at John Carroll that I wanted to come back. So I came back the next year. I coached there, and then the year after that, I was in GA.
Okay, so, and you were there for, I'm going to kind of like just buzz through your resume right here, then we'll get into the topic. So you were there for 4 years.
Yes.
And then you went to Iowa.
Yep.
And was that as an assistant role?
Yeah, Iowa State. Yep.
Yeah, Iowa State.
Yep.
And you were there for a year.
Yep.
And then to Texas, where we'll circle back to all this, but Texas is where you were there for 4 years.
Yes.
Right. And I think those years were formative.
No question.
Yes. Okay.
No question. And, no doubt about it.
All right. So then when you were there, you were working under Jeff Madden.
Yep. Jeff Madden.
Okay.
Yep.
And then also had access to Jen and Terry Todd.
Oh yeah.
Angel Spazov.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And a host of other people.
I got some good stories about Angel.
Yeah. I got some stuff I got some topics for that one there as well. All right. So after you were there for 4 years, you went to Miami for 3.
Sorry, Florida.
Florida. Yes. Yes. Florida. Okay. And then from Florida to the Rangers for a year.
Yep.
And then from the Rangers to the Falcons for 5.
Yes, sir. Yep.
And now it's XFL consulting. Yeah. And what else are you doing now?
So yeah, just that. I wrote a book.
children's book.
Children's book, yeah. And did all the illustrations for that. Actually did it. Yeah, so I'm pushing that, and I'm just sort of waiting on this next cycle to see what breaks.
Yes.
You know how it is. It's crazy. So with the XFL, great experience. But they lost a lot of money in the first year. Now they're doing a merger. So a lot of people, just got let go.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, when you're in that cycle that you're talking about, because a lot of people listening won't know what we're talking about.
Right.
Right now is the hot time, right? It's the midst of it because seasons are over.
Yep.
Right. And then when does that turn off?
In college, it starts like December. And I'll tell you, like, after the NFL season, you're going to have Black Monday. So that's when all the changes are made. And then it's a couple week process. But then you'll start seeing guys you have connections with get jobs. So this thing, it used to be like January, February, but it can go all the way into March where transitions happen, jobs open. And, it's really a crazy time because you don't want, I never want to see anyone lose their job, but that's part of the deal.
That's the nature of the business.
Yeah, it is what it is, so, like I was talking to you before, I mean, it's just some things haven't worked out in the league, and, I've been close, but no cigar. So just being patient.
Now, how did the Falcons happen?
So I worked with Dan Quinn when I was at University of Florida, and I worked with him for a year. And then I actually, when I was in transition, another transition time at Florida, Will Muschamp got let go. We all got let go pretty much. So I was getting paid for a little bit, 6 months, and I was up for a job with the military. So basically I called Dan. I said, "Hey, do you know anyone looking, or do you have any opportunities for me to help out?" So he gave me an opportunity to work with their OTAs off-season program. So I was there for like 8 weeks and just worked my ass off. My wife and I, she wasn't my wife at the time, but we lived in a Motel 6. It was awesome, man.
Yeah.
Just awesome.
Was it I mean, looking through here, fortunately, you had long stints.
Yeah.
At each one of these places, which plays out really well.
Yeah.
Where I know other coaches that's their timelines. Like I would need 2 pages.
Yeah.
Because it's just boom, 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 boom. It's just moving around.
Yeah.
And it's obviously building the relationships and building the connections.
Right.
Which is a big part of all that. And then let's jump into that now. So throughout all these times here, because other coaches that are going to be coming into the pipe, first off, they don't know what they're coming into. We'll get through that. Like they have no idea. They will when we're done, but they have no idea. I don't think that they understand how much networking they have to do.
Yeah.
And authentic networking.
Yep.
Not like an email here or there or Instagram DM here or there,
right? But
that authentic networking. So with all these jobs and all these different positions that you've had, I'm going to jump out on a limb here and say that it was networking that kind of helped land each one of those.
There's no doubt.
It wasn't just your resume looked great.
Right.
It was the resume's there, the experience is there, and this person you already had a network with.
No question. So Coach Story backing, I was coaching at John Carroll. How I got to Texas was by working camps, and I worked camps for 3 years. But Jeff Madden, Coach Story was his mentor. He's the guy that got him go out for football, and I coached with him. So we were at the conference, and he invited me to come down and work camp. So, I'm a GA. I don't have any money. So I saved up, I got a plane ticket and went to Austin, shook a lot of hands, coached my ass off. And that opened up a ton of doors, so, and it was, Dave, I had no aspirations to I was Division I. I didn't have that on my board. All I wanted to do was get a ton of information that I could bring back to my athletes at Carroll. That was it. And after 3 days, Dog was offering, he was offering me an internship. And, it was just because, I mean, that's how it shook out, just getting in front of those people and doing what you do.
Okay. Now, while you were through Texas, I believe that's when you have 2 master's degrees, right?
Yep.
One of them is in counseling, mental health, something like that.
Yep.
And the other one is in exercise science. So were those obtained while you were at Texas and Florida, or before that?
So I did the one at John Carroll when I was GA, and that was a long ass program. So did that one there. When I got to Texas, I knew I had the practical experience. So I went to Cal U. I wanted to get the hard science.
Yeah.
So I did that while I was working at Texas. Actually finished right before we went to the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a year intensive, and it was great. I could, because I'm reading stuff, and it's forced learning, and my mind sort of goes over here. Where can I implement that? It was great. So long story short, at Texas, I earned my second master's.
Okay. There's ongoing conversations now about and actually, I don't want to say it's ongoing because it goes back to, I was being asked this 15 years ago, how important is a degree when it comes to strength and conditioning? Well, I guess if you're going to work in the collegiate setting, you're not going to get hired.
Right.
So you're going to need that. But what I think gets lost when the advice goes out and I don't necessarily disagree with this advice that for a lot of degrees it's too expensive and the ROI is just not there. So it's better to just have the work experience. But what I think gets lost in that, and I think you're going to validate this here, is those people that do go that route, their in study or their own study far exceeds the study of probably the kids that are actually in university studying subject.
No question.
Right. So while you were at Texas, there's influences there, right?
Yeah.
But when you compare what you learned in a classroom, or for a formal test versus what you learned on your own, through journals, books, texts, networking, all this other kind of stuff.
Right.
How would you weigh that?
Oh, I'd say, that the practical way more than the other. I think what educational opportunities or getting a master's degree, it gets me thinking about different things in application to the practical. So, when you're in that forced learning, it really, for me, it helped me go back to the practical and ask more questions and really dive into more things, like on the therapy side. When I went to Texas, I had an agenda. And I think both of those, when I was working on that second one, it supported the practical. And, but, talking with guys like you, talking with coaches, that weight is way more. Yeah. It's part of the deal.
Well, I think that, to circle back, I think that's what's being left out when the advice is going out that, hey, look, you don't need to go to school, but nobody is coming up underneath that and saying, well, you need to spend 10 times the number of hours actually learning this discipline.
Yeah.
Wherever you're going to learn it.
Right.
Because the message a lot of the kids are receiving is, oh, I don't need to go to school. I just need to find a job and do the work. Like, no, even the ones that dropped out that succeed in different areas of business or whatever it is, their own self-study is that's not being spoke about.
Right.
And if just through my own education, the amount of shit that I was learning in the classroom stuff didn't do.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that because communication, it has some value. It had some value, but what the self-study, back then going to the library, no Google, and reading all that stuff and talking to that's a lot of time, man.
It is.
And you don't realize it until you look back because you love doing it. Right. Because you're in this pursuit of like the perfect answer, the perfect program, all the shit that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
If you just keep digging, you're going to find it.
Yeah.
And But when you go back and think of how many hours and how much time, was spent on all that, it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you, like at Carroll, John Carroll was invaluable. I mean, I learned a ton there. Even the process of getting into school, but to be accepted into my master's degree, I had to go because I wasn't like, I did everything to get by undergrad, right? To basically play ball.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I had some personal experiences on the mental health side and some people related to me that sort of pushed me that way. And I was always curious about the mind and all that. So I really targeted that program when I went to Carroll. I had to take, it was 4 classes I had to take, upper level psychology, and I had to get a 4.0 to get in that program. I had to, I think it was the GMAT or whatever. I had to get a certain score, and it was higher than most. I got my first 4.0 in those psychology classes because I gave a shit. And I knew that it was going to help me in what I wanted to do. The other stuff, like the theoretical educational stuff, I'm like, just like, come on, man, but when I really got into it, and I found my passion, I excelled. I was a part of like, some, what is it? An honor society. And I was like, well, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. How's that? Like, how's this work out? Yeah. How'd this work out?
Yeah. So it's good. So yeah, I think those force work and, having that stand, I think there's benefits to it, and you got to do some shit you don't like in life, and I think those are good lessons.
Well, yeah. And that's going to play devil's advocate, it's going to teach you how to learn.
Yeah.
It's going to teach you how to filter information.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate bullshit detector.
Yeah.
If you can figure that out any other way, that's great. Yeah. But sometimes, like, a lot of people don't know how to read research.
Yeah.
Or they don't know what it actually is. Yeah. That's probably the bigger problem. They just don't know what it is. And then what it actually means. Is it even applicable?
Yeah.
And all this. With the collegiate experience, you've worked with all levels, right? So for a big chunk of time. So we all know that the athlete, because even back then, the athlete coming in lacked mobility and so forth. And it's probably worse now. I'm assuming it's way worse now. But through the collegiate experience with these athletes, how do I want to, it's kind of in a way almost like high school, because there's a spin. There's a 4-year spin or a 3-year spin that you're going to have. So you always have beginners coming in.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And then you always have leaders you're trying to develop.
Yeah.
And then once you get the good leader, he leaves, right? Yeah. Graduates. And then you're right back to that spool, which keeps you in a perpetual state of working with beginners to intermediates in the weight room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Now, as far as on the field, 3 different levels. I mean, you're dealing with, good. We're not going to say they're bad, but you're dealing with good to great athletes at the same time.
Yep.
So working with, first off, are those 3 levels when it comes to coaching, or 2 levels, say 2 levels. So the John Carroll level and then the Texas level, how much of a difference between athletes is there between those 2?
Yeah. So Carroll, I had some really strong guys in the weight room, and we developed that and all that. And like, I'm not patting myself on the back. We just had guys who were really committed. When you get to the Division I level, you're seeing guys who are like, they're just gifted in all areas. Now you have some at Division III too that are gifted. The difference between that level is a couple inches. It's they're faster, but tactically and technically from football, it's very similar. So, I would say the Division III guys, they're not getting paid, so you have that. They're playing for the love of the game. And I'm not saying that's not the same with Division I. A lot of guys love it. They might see it as a way out, or whatever it might be. But it's really the commitment's a little different. When you get now, it's a lot different because there's so much demand when you're at a university like Texas or Ohio State. I mean, those guys, I mean, they're football players, you know, especially with NIL and everything else, you know. So it's a balancing act, but it's definitely the other thing too, Dave, is media. Like, you know, Division III guys aren't going to have to deal with that. You know, these guys have to deal with all that stuff now. And when I was at Texas and Florida, it was sort of the beginning of the social media, or, you know, it was getting bigger, but it wasn't where it is today. So there's, I mean, those guys at Division I have to deal with so many pressures, expectations. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy, you know. So
what about the skill level?
Skill level, I would say, like, just stature. You know, guys are obviously bigger. Division I, they're faster. From a technical execution on the field, I don't know the difference, you know, but it's a funneling system. You know, it's just the big ones are, you know, the guys who are big and can move fast. They're funneled, you know, Division I. Division III guys, you know, they might be. You have some really good, technically sound football players, Division III. You know, you got guys Division I that they might not be doing every step right, but they're just so much better.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's crazy.
Well, I think James Smith, in one of the articles he wrote years ago, kind of broke it down at 3 levels of athlete.
Yeah.
You know, there's the one that probably isn't ever going to play.
Sure.
Right. Sure. So there's that. Then there's that middle layer to where they're good. And if with the right strength coach, the right coaching, the right skill coach, you know, can be great. Then you got that great, which, you know, I think he hypothesized at the time, just leave them the fuck alone. Right. Because you just, they're going to do whatever they're going to do anyhow until they get to pro level, which we'll get to. Because then it's a longevity thing, because that 4-year cycle stops. Right. And it's from a coaching standpoint, a methodology standpoint, programming standpoint, you know, the 4-year quadrennial's awesome, right? Because you can actually have something planned out, you know, over a long term. But it usually doesn't work, right? Because now it's all broken up because of that, or kids leave or transfer or drop out. You know, there's a lot of that. Is there less of that at the higher collegiate level? Less turnover? Actually, I would say there's probably more now, right?
Well, more now because of the portal and everything. It used to be a lot harder. So I would think, more now.
Right. So how did your training philosophy and methodology evolve over this time period? And well, there is the weight room and there is the field. So there's the athletes coming in or changing over a period of time. Right. Yep. How big of a change were you seeing with those athletes coming in over the span that you were doing with that level?
At Texas, or just
at all of them? So John Carroll, they're coming in at X fitness level, average. Right. And then your last year at Florida, right? That was the last one before you went to the Rangers. Your last year at Florida. What are they coming in like?
I would think, you have some of those guys who are just really, really talented. And, you know, I would see with them sometimes go good to great. I would see the lower level guys respond to training, you know, sometimes better, you know, because they have more, maybe they didn't do that type of training before or whatever. But, you know, it's funny, Dave, like you said, the great guys, you know, I had all these and guys I played with who were really big at the beginning, and you know, they might not improve as much in college. Maybe their ceiling, you know, wherever. But I think with those guys, they become, and they get those Division I scholarships or whatever, because they're refining those movement patterns and technical stuff at an earlier age. and then other people catch up. But to answer your question, I would see over time a lot of improvement on all ends, just from guys, from their mentality too, their body, you know, if we targeted those things. Now in college, you have so many people, and they have big staffs now. So bigger staffs, but you know, people break it up different now. You know, they'll have you know, maybe a coach that really targets with the skill guys, wide receivers, DBs, you know, and they work on those things. But I would see, yeah, at every level, at every place I've been, I've seen improvement. And when you stop seeing improvement, that's when it gets interesting and what you got to do, you know.
So what I'm asking about is, when they first come in, were they better? Well, granted, it's a different level too, right?
Yeah.
Were they better than when they were 10 years ago? Right. Because my pushback would be, I guess where I'm trying to go here is there's the criticism that all our younger generation are, you know, on phones, lazy, not doing anything, which I don't disagree with. Right. But at the same time, the ones that are doing the work, the training is better now at younger ages than it ever has been before. So if it's those that are doing the work, which would be at the Texas and the Iowa and the Florida at that level, they're coming in on that first year, should be coming in, you know, higher skill, higher strength, higher speed than what they were in 2002 at John Carroll. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, they should.
Okay, well, that's why I'm asking. That's the question I'm asking, is they should, but are they?
Yeah, I would say, training, they come in better educated on what we do, for sure. Now, there's other things in play there, as far as like, okay, they've been a part of structured stuff, so they know the deal. They know what a warm up is. They know that. But sometimes they don't know, you know, I guess the second part, like really the strain, you know, and I think that's more like they don't go as dark. When they're trying, you know, so
they may not have had to, though. You know, for them in high school, they're the best in the league.
And I think that's where, you know, that's the good challenge. Like when you see these guys who, they know a dynamic warm up, they know, you know, they know what to do, but then, what do they do when they get hit in the mouth? Their resolve, their grit, you know, that type of thing. I think more on that line. That's where the difference is. You know, I think, look, you know, when you get your ass kicked, you learn. You learn. I think sometimes kids now are afraid to get their ass kicked.
And they may not had to have had. Right. So that's kind of where I'm going, is if they're a great athlete, you know, I don't want to say breeze through high school, but they breeze through high school football. At some point throughout this process, and you've worked at all levels, they're going to rise up against people the same as them.
No question.
And then there's that mental challenge. So is that what you were seeing? And then how would you go about working with them to get through that mental challenge? Because it may have been the first one they've ever had to experience in sport. Now, they may have experience in life in other areas, but in sport, that's got to be a humbling experience. When they've had the newspapers and everybody write about how great they are, then they just get their fucking face smashed.
And I mean, I would say, you said something. They might have had it in life, right? So, okay, there's always experiences to build upon with people who have, you know, a challenge, let's say, in the gym or with the team. not everyone's going to come in, and they're not going to start as soon as they get there. And a lot of guys do struggle with that. So I think you build upon past experiences, and that's up to you as a coach to create that dialogue.
Or that trust, right?
That trust, right? You could see it. You could see a guy's not, he's got all the ability in the world. He's got it, but something's off. And I think, you need to address that somehow, some way, and find a way to get in there and talk to him, but build upon the things that he did overcome or she overcame in her life. I think that's, I'm going in my psych background here, but that's really, in my opinion, the key. Everyone has had a point in their life where they had to have been strong to overcome, been resilient, so I think you build upon that if you do see it, and teach them how to use it in the current situation.
Would you say that's the key to their success at whatever level they're at? Because if that's not addressed, it doesn't matter what great training program you have.
No question. And I think, you know this, 18 to 22, whatever training you're doing, they're going to respond. We know that, so like for me, that mental side and really getting into finding out what gets them going to overcome those things, to take that next step, is really critical. I mean, it's part of it. And you see the guys that don't do that. And I'm not saying it's on me. They have to be open to it too. But if they're not going to make it.
What's an example of, you don't have to mention the names, but an example of one of them that was hard to get there, but then you got them there, and then you just sit back like, oh shit.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, man. See, Dave, here's the thing. Like every place I've gone, I love working with the high risk people. Like I love the guys.
What do you mean by high risk?
So the guys who have an edge to them.
Yeah.
I love that shit. Like I love working with those guys because I want them to overcome and do stuff. And I like it. It's a challenge, and most of the time it's, guys who came from rough upbringings and had challenges there, and teaching them how to channel it. So I had a guy when I first came in, he had a lot of trust issues. So, I mean, this guy would say, fuck off, man. He was a good player, really good player. And I just kept coming at him in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I closed the door. I don't fear you. I just don't fear you, man. Like, you're not scaring me. You're not going to push me away that easy. And we had a breakthrough. He started committing, and you just...
What do you mean committing?
He started buying into what we were doing.
Okay.
Just started doing the work at the intensity with the intent that we wanted him to do. And to this day, I see him, and it's great. Like really cool, and I think that's, not getting too deep, but a lot of trauma in this kid's life, and a lot of trauma, like crazy shit. So you never know whatever, guy has a bad day. Shit, guys are going to be moody when they come in. They just smile. They say, fuck off, whatever. I learned that early in therapy. I had a kid, cutest little kid in the world. Walk by him, I'm working in an inpatient facility. What's up, man? Fuck you. Just start cussing, and it's like, all right, man. Hey, have a good day. So I think getting to the deeper root of who they are and how it's going to help them is critical, and I think I love that with college. But it happens in the league too. I mean, it happens at all levels, where guys, the higher you get, the stuff that we talk about, consistency, that everyone talks about, success, consistency, doing the right thing, attention to detail, those things come into play. Doesn't matter how good you are.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that shit, you're not going to make it.
So while you were staying at the collegiate level, most of the time was an assistant level. So how much input did you have on the actual physical programming?
So not a ton at Texas. A lot with what people would call prehab and special cases.
Okay.
So
such as
I would take a guy, he wouldn't mind me saying his name, Blaine Irby. He had one of the worst knee injuries I've ever seen. Had drop foot, and he came to me and he still wanted to work out. So Blaine, I would assist with the whole team, but Blaine would come up, and it was a team of people. He had to get decompression surgeries, all this stuff, Dave, but he wanted to be a part of the team, so he just kept working out. And then he was getting these surgeries. Eventually, he had a twitch in his foot, and he played his senior year. Long story short, but like with him, I did a bunch of stuff. He didn't know he was going to play again. He just started training with me. But I would work with quarterbacks, just offshoot guys, and support the head coach, the head strength coach, Yeah. So, but all that sort of stuff on the side was filling.
Okay, so while you were at Texas, you were also around Jan and Terry Todd.
Yeah.
Right. So that was as I said earlier, I think that was a very formidable learning time for you, right? Because you got information just coming from everywhere.
It was awesome.
And while you can't control the program, in your brain, you're thinking about things that you could do better.
Absolutely.
Or would like to do better, observing.
Absolutely.
And then with their influence, then Spazov's influence, what were some of the takeaways that you had from Jen and Terry?
Yeah.
Let's just go there first.
Yeah. So Jan and Terry used to come in, and they would just, they would train. And Terry would go on the old hammer deal, do his thing. And Jan, I forget what Jan pulled, 450 something, long time ago. But she, just you could just tell she was a beast, So when they would come in, you would sort of talk with them a little bit, and then they would just give you snippets, right? But then they retired from teaching, and they moved over to the North End Zone at UT, and they had a Museum of Physical Culture. So I would go over there and talk with Terry a lot, and he shared a ton of stories, and same with Jan. Just snippets, but very valuable stuff at the time. Like even they walk in, what is that person doing over there, Jess? This is interesting. I haven't seen this, but just their presence around there and just talking shop. Is
there any examples that stand out to you?
Not like one, not like one defining one, Dave, to be honest. You bounce stuff off them. Like, what would you do? They're very much, they obviously do the strongman at the Arnold, or did with Terry being gone. But you'd pick their brain on stuff of what they've seen and that type of thing. And they would just be open. And again, they're, influential, but just a lot of wisdom.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of pinging ideas, I guess, is the way to kind of explain that. Louis was like that, so I'd watch him consult with coaches, and, half of my brain is like, this is the dumbest shit I ever heard, then the other part, okay, that makes sense. So it's helping you to process. Does that be a way to kind of explain this? Well, all the other information that you're learning and reading about, then having them around helps to process that.
No question.
Because in both directions, because they may be, talking about things that were 40 years ago that no way anybody's going to do anymore. We've learned it
Right.
It's better. You know, there are better ways. So it's Louis the same way. There's things that come out, be like, okay, there's better ways, but that's still processing, learning process, you know, moving forward with that.
Right. Like I would, here's one. So in 2015, we were up at the Arnold. We came up and Jan got us in, and we just met up with her and Terry, and Bill Kazmaier's in there. And like a situation like that, like I walked in the room and I always ask people, hey, if you had one lift and one lift only that you could do, what would it be? And Bill said, you know, hang snatch, hang clean for strongman, right? And I was like, so I reflected on that, and Jan and Terry were in that room. And when I reflect on that, I'm like, okay, and I asked him why, because that was his limiting factor. That was his weakness. And like, if it weren't for Jan and Terry Todd, I would have never been able to ask Bill that question. But I knew exactly where Bill was coming from, because that was his.
No, that's a big takeaway though.
Right.
Because that's where his focus was.
Right.
You know, in building the weakness.
Right.
Where he could have answered the bench press. You know, something that he excelled at.
Right. I you know, it was, you know, this is something I always did with interns. It's a bait question.
Yeah.
They, you know, immediately college athletics, power clean. I said, okay, power clean. So what are you going to do for absolute strength? What are you going to do for, you know, what are you going to do? It's a speed strength movement. And I said, now if you said ground-based pull, now I have deadlifting. I have power cleaning. I have power cleaning from various, you said one thing, the power clean. So think of it, you know, and they all sort of look at me like, shit, that makes sense. Yeah. You know, just being open and to that, but you know, developing the whole spectrum, you know, but I love asking that question.
Now with Angel Spazov, Bulgarian weightlifting coach, right? I have some of his shit right here, by the way. I have a story about that. First off, how much was he utilized?
So and I know this, I wasn't there, but in the beginning, quite a bit with football, they were doing Bulgarian waves, power cleaning, and Coach Madden would tell you this. They had like 3 guys with over 400-pound clean, but they went 8-4. You know, so he was utilized. He was a great resource. He worked primarily with Olympic sports, so soccer, swimming, big into swimming, and I'll tell you, man, he was a character.
Well, I asked because I think Zadorinsky was it Penn?
Penn State.
Penn.
Yeah,
and very few coaches would go speak to him.
My wife took his class. Zatsorsky loved my wife because she was like one of the only females in there. So like, I'd go to her. Oh, I know. You know, I had the book. So I know, Doc. I go, what? You know, I'm sitting there like, you don't realize the opportunity you had. But yeah. Anyway,
what were some takeaways that you had from him?
From Angel?
Yeah.
I would say, you know, specificity in regards to how they train later on with the weightlifting team, what they were doing before that, comparative. I actually have a piece of paper, 2 pieces of paper that he drew the platforms and how they were. So and this is, I'm not doing the old pat on the back, but he would come in, Dave, and he'd look at me. He had like this lazy eye, sort of like this, and go, Coach, you're the best. And he just said like because he saw like some of the things I was doing and thinking about, whatever. And I was like, man, that's awesome. You know, but the biggest thing with Angel was, I think, just the way he, like, you know, they categorized everything, you know, and he would look at the athlete and just say, you're this, whatever. He was such a great resource on the, you know, the Eastern Bloc side and that type of training. Like, this is a good one. So he came in my office. I had Bumpa, I had Zatsiorsky, I had Voroshansky, and Bondarchuk. I had all these books, and I was reading Bumpa, and he goes, "Coach, what are you reading?" I just got it, coach. I'm keeping my mind open to anything. Throw in trash. Did all research with average athletes. So I go, okay, who would you say is the best? Voroshansky, very smart. Bondarchuk, athlete, knows what they need, and did it at a high level, you know. So he would sort of break it down and just tell you what he thought was useful and what was
well, that helps to define how you're going to see each rabbit hole you go down.
Right.
Because when I've been down all those rabbit holes, right? And it's like, oh, fuck, you know, you don't know the context.
Right.
And well, you know what people tell you the context is. Don't bother looking at it all. It's all drugs, you know, so it's like, whatever, you know, and when I was in college, I pulled this out. I found, when I kind of like yourself, I didn't give a shit about college. All I cared about was powerlifting. But at a certain point in time, I found the library, and this was, God, when was this? I don't have a date on it, but one of the Spazov, where's that at? Matt Wenning used this because he just wrote a book for Human Connect, so he used it as a resource. He had, was this at Texas when he was there? He had a whole series in the NSCA journal, you know, of articles that he put in there.
Yeah.
And there was one I was dumb enough to actually do. This training block there, right? That's a 4-week cycle. I did that for my squat, right? And my takeaway from it actually helped my squat a lot. It took fucking forever, right? Because you work up and max out.
Yeah.
And then you take the percent of whatever that max was.
Right.
Right. Where to me, you know, after doing all that, when it was over, I'm like, I'm never doing this again, because the work capacity and the load was just killer. Right. Yeah. But it changed the way I thought of percents relative to training.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you have a meet max and you try to, you know, that's a CM, that's a competitive max, as he would define it there as a CM.
Yeah.
Then there's a training max, right?
Yep.
But then there's like a daily max. And so what I saw out of that was there's some brilliance here, because they don't care about the single, they care about the triples. But they want the triples to be effective, so they have to know what the single is for the day.
Right.
But then you work up again, right? Because there's more sets.
Right.
And where my takeaway from that whole thing was, what if I could, in a training day, work up enough to have a perceived max? Mm-hmm. Like, say it's 60-70% in my brain.
Yeah.
I think, you know what, I might be able to hit 800. I don't know.
Yeah.
750 for sure.
Yeah.
Probably around 765, whereas then I would use the percent off my perceived max.
Yeah.
And then when I started adjusting the powerlifting training moving forward, it started to move again, because now the percents, you know, can still be debated, but the percents had more sense. Now, I've never been able to replicate it with anybody else, because for years I was writing perceived max.
Yeah.
Like, go off 70% of a perceived max, then we'll waive that over 3 weeks. And
right.
But they end up, and I come in and they're like missing weights. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, so then it was like, okay, the perceived max, what you think, but also what your training partner thinks.
Right.
And somebody else thinks. So now 3 people have to agree.
Yeah.
Then they'd all still be fucking missing. You know, so, but that was the first time with that that I was exposed to even that idea.
Right.
And I don't know how much that is really tied in to the entire Bulgarian weightlifting system. It's just one block, right? So without a full context, you don't really know. Would you, from conversations with him, would you say that that was a big component of their training or a minor component?
He would with certain athletes for sure. So if you had, with swimmers and some of the soccer people, was a little different demand. And I don't think he would put this emphasis on it, but he would do, he would do stuff like this, Dave, for sure. Like I remember that, to be honest with you, like right when you, I mean, my buddy, Trey Zappetta worked with him a lot, and he knew his style a lot more, in the nuts and bolts of things. And I watched him work with that. He was brilliant with, he had this swimmer who, she was international competitor. She was gold medalist, and at the Olympics, and I mean, just brilliant athlete. She had been doing some other training where they were doing hill training, and they were actually running down a hill too. And she just felt like shit. When you're working with a swimmer, they're constantly stretching, and like, hey, if you're going to run down a hill, their joints are lax. Now the pounding is going to cause more issues. She was deathly afraid of just running, because she thought this is going to, this is going to hurt me. So Angel put her on a treadmill and had her start walking backwards, and then eventually running backwards till her confidence came back up to where she was running again, which I thought was brilliant. As far as the weightlifting and things like that, he was very, he was older at that time, but he would sit on the floor and he would watch. If someone had a lot of talent and he would, a lot of talent and was really into it, he would go get them and he would coach the hell out of them. If they weren't that interested, he'd still coach them, but sort of just, I
get that. But the one thing I've always wondered about that and those kind of things is he's a coach. He's seen these athletes day after day after day. So I wondered how many times they really even had to work up, because his eye would see almost immediately when they came in where they were.
Yes.
The same way you would with your athletes if you work with them long enough. You just know, they're not at 100% capacity. They're at like 80. Yeah. So that would negate the need to do that, because then they already know what's in there. But if he's to express what they do, then it would look like, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's that translation shit that becomes the hard part with those guys, unless you had access to them. To be able to ask them or to see even how that applies to sport. That's weightlifting. Yeah. Right. That's not football. Right. It's two different things. And idiots like me are going to take it and apply it to powerlifting, which is heavier load. You know what I'm saying? It's a different stress. Yeah. No doubt. And, but it's interesting that you had access and people had access to them. And how, because the same stories come out with Verkhoshansky and other people that I know that were communicating directly with a lot of these guys. Yep. And what you think and what we see, let me say, our interpretation of what they were doing isn't exactly how they would apply.
I think it's a lot more simple. Yeah. I think it's a lot more simple, Dave. And that's what I saw with him. And I think that's another thing. Like, I did see them work up on certain things and with certain athletes, but I think, you throw stuff out there to see where they're at on that day. Yeah. And if they were ready, let it rip. Yeah. And I think that's, to be honest with you, I think we're we're losing that a little bit.
Well, we'll get into methodology and training here in a little bit, but I think that's important because especially at the level of the athletes that you're talking about, they don't linearly get stronger. It comes in these bouts.
Yes.
Right. And if you don't, you can undertrain them in a way.
Right.
If you don't recognize that they actually now, and maybe they're not stronger, maybe they're just technically better at the lift.
Right.
Which is displayed as being stronger.
Dave, I say that like the power clean all the time. Are they developing power or are they expressing it?
Yes. There's a big difference.
Big difference. And the density of the work that you do with those exercises, I mean, that's what's gonna, you're working with guys who are coming out, and you can find different ways to do it. But I always said, hey man, you emphasize cleans or, whatever for a particular period. And, it's nowhere near the density that these guys would do it at.
Yeah.
So how in the hell are you saying it's building? No, it's expressing power. And I think that's with a lot of, now you might see it year to year over time, that workload, you emphasize things more and it has a direct effect. But I mean, it's
a tricky balance though sometimes because their expression that they're able to do may not equate to the work capacity they can actually do.
Right.
So you can't just change the percentages because that was expressed differently because the work capacity isn't there.
Right.
So it's a art.
Yes.
That kind of comes into all this.
I couldn't agree more.
And, but without seeing it,
mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You're, in my opinion, you're missing a major dial.
Yeah.
Or metric. Metric. That's a better word. All right. So before you went to the Falcons, you worked as the Special Forces.
Yeah.
All right. So now there's a completely different, well, I'm making another assumption. Is that a completely different mindset than the athletes you were working with?
I think, yes and no. I think, without the obvious, Dave, I mean, you've been with operators and had operators on the show. It's totally different when you're dealing with life and death and things. My role when I got there was basically, okay, I'm going to show up. I'm going to train first thing. I'm going to train on the floor with these guys, and then I'm going to coach them. So I'm going to get dirty and just like, I want them to see me train and do some stuff and whatever. I wasn't worried about the programming or anything like that. I had an idea, but I really needed to dive into what they were doing in that culture and be open.
Mm-hmm.
So Ranger Sikhs, they're a different breed. They're elite, and I think for me, when I went in there, that assessment period was shorter, but my focus was really on their individual needs, because when they're doing their job, they have to work as a unit all the time. So when it comes to physical preparation, there's some autonomy there at some time, sometimes. So you want to give them that, and you want to give them something that's not going to fuck them up. So, but if they can't connect with you, then it doesn't matter because they won't listen, and so I would say it was more like working with a pro athlete versus a college athlete. I think it prepared me well for when I went and worked with pros in the NFL. I really do. It really prepared me for that. So as far as what we did training wise, it was really based off, like, I'm a big static postural assessment. I want to see the way they move too. But if you're standing there and I'm seeing overactivity, like, I'm going to do something about it and attack those things. So we had Ranger love volume. They love to get their ass, like, they love volume. So I had to switch up a little bit with that. Really focus on eccentric, technical, posterior stability type things to help them and give them volume in the right areas when they were training. So, you ever seen rucking?
Yeah.
Okay, so rucking, that thing presses down. When guys come back from Ranger school, they have rucksack palsy. So, I mean, these guys are just beat up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, what do I do to counteract that? Well, now you're going to work a lot of scap stabilizer stuff, postural muscles, hips, and I've rucked with them. And it's not like I wore the wrong shoes, by the way. It sucked. I was going over, but I got him like, golly, man, my hips are sore. Okay, I got an idea of what I'm going to target. From a mentality standpoint, I think I learned a ton. It was about the standard, individuals. And it was like that with the pros too. Hey man, I'm checking you because it's the standard. It's not personal. I want the best for you. It's the standard. It's not personal, and when you put it in that context, I think you get more buy-in and you get guys to really listen. And if you don't check them, they walk all over you. But for me, that experience was unbelievable.
Were you able to get to a point where you could put in absolute strength work?
Yeah. It was built up over time. I actually have a video of a friend of mine who he got shot, T6 complete. So he was still at Ranger or at the battalion at that time, and I wanted to work with him. Dave, he's probably 120 pounds soaking wet. He benched 205. And that's not a lot, but he's got no leg drive.
Mm-hmm.
He's 120 pounds.
Yeah.
And I have him doing pull-ups with a chain. My job, my role there, because of my background working with PTs and doing that, my job was to get guys off profile or guys coming off profile and getting them ready to be a Ranger again. So return to play.
Yeah.
So it was a unique position, and I worked with some great guys.
How long would you have to turn them around?
They would that would be based off what the PT recommends. He was the guy I worked for was at the time he was a captain. Now he's a major, but great guy, and he would clear them eventually. Him and the doc, but when they were cleared to work with me, they would just give me the limitations. Hey man, you can't. I got it.
Yeah,
we're good. But again, it was.
Well, I'm just thinking in my head how to lay that out, because you would have kind of like a recovery block, then a strength block.
Right.
And if you have 4 weeks, what the fuck is that? You don't have that.
Right.
That's different than if you have 6 months.
The tactical schedule for them is so intense. But the guys who are obviously coming off injury, they're going to be there until they're ready to go again.
Yeah.
So that was the cool part. We would talk about progressions.
So that was somewhat fluid based upon their recovery.
Based on the recovery.
The injury. Okay.
Yeah. So, and we had some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had some major stuff. So you would figure it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we did do not just with Trav. Travis Dunn was the guy that benched 205, but the other guys, we would work up. And then they have a standard test where they would do a certain max. I think it was a 3-rep max on a trap bar deadlift. So we would do that, and I'd be coaching my ass off on that on the day they were doing, because there's so many guys, you don't get to see them all.
Yeah.
So it's just like the power clean. You do most of the coaching on the day you max it out in some programs.
Elite FTS was founded in 1998 with the aim to live, learn, and pass on. We've done this through training-related content, that allows you to become the strongest athlete and coach that you can. Over the past 2 decades, actually 2.5 decades, we've published more complementary training media than anybody else in the industry. When you look at the number of articles, the Q&As, the blogs, the videos, the podcasts, there's over 1 million pages of content that we've put out there. We've been able to do this through your support of Elite FTS. So when you purchased Elite FTS strength equipment, bands, accessories, gear, apparel, or anything through the site, you directly help support the content that we put out, which in turn helps support other people on their journey of becoming stronger and better coaches. So stronger athletes and better coaches, which encompasses the aim and the vision to live, learn, and pass on. So I thank you for the support that you've been giving for the past 25 years and encourage you to keep supporting Elite FTS into the future so we can all help more people become better and stronger. Discount code Table Talk for 10% off your first order. All right, guys, if you like the Table Talk podcast, then you're going to love the crew. If you're struggling with trying to get through a sticking point, you're trying to figure some specific aspect of your training out that you just can't dial in, you're dealing with injuries, you're trying to figure out how to better optimize your training, all the stuff you're seeing on social media is confusing, and all you need is a little guidance and support, or just somebody to look at your lifts to make sure that they're either heading in the right direction, or if there's a weak point in the lift, they can point out what that weak point is. Well, that's what we have the crew for. So when you join the crew, you get an extra Table Talk podcast each month called the Crewcast. You also get access to our Discord community, which has a training Q&A, form checks with top coaches, mindset section, nutrition, training logs, programs, over 30 ebooks, plus exclusive ebooks just for the crew, webinars, lectures, seminars, giveaways ranging from full strength equipment. We've given away many yoke bars this year. We've given away actually pieces of strength equipment as well as accessory items, and you get exclusive crew discounts. So go to the link in the description that says join the crew, click it, join now, and start getting stronger today. All right, guys, we've got a new limited edition drop, the original Mountain Dog tee that John Meadows had us design from the very beginning. So it's the first tee that he had made. Once again, this is a limited edition item, so when they're gone, they're gone. While I have your attention, you've seen me wear this one in a few podcasts to date. We've been holding back on it. This here, the 4-star tee, I think that's what we call it. It's on the website. New items, also under limited edition. Check out our shoulder saver pads. It's an easy way to do limited restricted range of motion exercises like board press that basically you just pop the pad on the bar, reduces the range of motion, pop it back off when you're done. Thank you guys for the support. Head over to EliteFTS.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Element, a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything that you need and nothing that you don't. In other words, no sugar, no artificial coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, and no BS. With Element, I love the watermelon. The watermelon tastes freaking awesome. I drank 1 pack every day, no matter what. People that train out here, it's sitting out here for them all the time. The boxes don't last very long. Right now, Element is offering Table Talk listeners a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single-serving packages free with any Element order. Get yours at drinkelement.com/tabletalk. The deal is only available through the link in the description. The other thing is if you don't like it, you can just give it away to a salty friend and Element will give you a 100% refund. No risk, money back guarantee. Head over to drinkelement.com/tabletalk. All right, so now we'll move into the professional level where after the Special Forces, you went into the Falcons.
Yep.
But would it be safe to say that also coincides with a time to where now you have full control over what the program is and what it's to look like?
Yep.
So when you first started laying that all out, what did that look like? Because at this point you have all these experiences, you know, all the education and all that. So it's like, now here's the template.
Yeah.
So what's the template look like?
Yeah. So,
or what did it look like? Because then it's gonna change.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, so I always had some influence in programming, but it, now it was going to be with everyone. Same with Rangers. I would individual guys, but when I came to Atlanta, you're absolutely right. I had all this information that I had gathered over the years, and I put it all on the board. That year, I didn't go to the combine, and I just stayed back, and it was, I had an idea what they had been doing in there before. And I really wanted to take the technical part to another level with cueing and everything else. But I also really wanted to think about some of the things that they were dealing with at the time, where I needed to emphasize them. So now they didn't have a ton of stuff, but when I put it all on the board, I had, this system, and I always say system versus program, Dave, because a system can evolve, and, just, talking with Louis, reading and talking with other coaches, Spazoff, all that, it all was sort of melded into this thing. So I knew that I was going to waive, we were going to do speed work. I knew that in the biggest thing at that point was the off-season program, so it was 9 weeks. You're going to bring guys in, and from day one, it's got to be about movement. And because you don't know what they're doing, so it's got to be about movement. And I wanted to build into strength, but strength was a little further down, so basically what I did when I got on that board was just, I mapped everything out. And the resounding theme was isolation, integration. Okay. So, Nordic curls, right? Overhead squats, what most power lifters would do for ancillary work to bring up their weaknesses, I wanted to do at the forefront. Because when you go out on the field, you have to work as one, and you have to, your whole body is moving. So when they're moving outside, if I have them if they leave and they just did a intensive hamstring exercise, where's their body at that point? It's the last thing you stressed. So I knew what the schedule was like in the building. So periodization started as soon as they walked in. So, and what I mean by that is, what are they doing in the morning? Are they eating breakfast at the facility? How are they going about? I was thinking about all this shit. So the way I set it up was, your things, the LPHC musculature that's normally, a high injury rate in the NFL, we targeted that stuff first. So I would target that, and then we would integrate. So what do I mean by integrate? Okay. If I isolate hamstrings, the groin, whatever it might be, if I'm doing Copenhagen's or something like that, how do I reintegrate that? Well, I like partial Olympic movements. I like something working over multiple joints. And for me, either a hang clean pull, a hang snatch pull, a clean pull from a block, even a hang position when I go below the knee. Okay. Now I'm coordinating hamstrings and glutes to work back together in an upward fashion. It's not the same fashion as running, but I'm resyncing the system to do that.
Yeah.
So I would do that, and then we would structure from there, whether, every day I would do some form of total body method lift in that first, after the isolation exercises. So I would do that, integrate. The only day we didn't was the the third day.
So how's that lay out with field work, right? Because field work is also plyometric work, right?
No question.
So that is dynamic work.
Right. So field work, I'm very much high-low. Very much high-low. I picked up some stuff from Lauren Seagrave. He used to do this regeneration run. He still does, where it's intermixed with certain activation exercises, quadruped, leg raise series. I know some of the listeners probably aren't familiar with trackside therapy, right? But they do these different movements to assess and then maybe get a release on a certain area of the body and then take it through to see if any movement's being inhibited when they're going, right? So it's sort of set up like that, but it's great work capacity. So coaches always go, hey, we're going to do a linear day and a multi-directional day. I'm sure you've heard that. In this system, everything was either high intensity COD, high intensity COD, high intensity linear, or a low intensity COD, linear. So that's how I broke it up. So I'd have an inventory of all these stuff, all the movements on the field, and I would plug it where it needed to go and how I would emphasis for that day. Obviously, the high intensity stuff would be more plyometric based, reactive, ground reactive forces, all that stuff, right, in there. And I would pair that with what we were doing in the gym or how, what the emphasis was for the day. So acceleration would be like a speed squat day.
And how would that lay out over off season? How would it lay out over a week?
Yeah.
Is the load front loaded or back loaded?
Back loaded.
Okay.
Great question. I love it. All right. So we went Monday through Thursday. Monday through Thursday, and Friday was their day off or an optional day. Why we did that? Some guys, you get more buy-in. Remember, OTAs, off-season program, is not mandatory. So you want to give them a 3-day weekend, get more buy-in, more guys there. So Monday was what I would call low CNS. It would be highly aerobic. It would be an upper body day with a little combo with a total body. Okay. So you're working posterior cuff. We would always do movement first. So we would go out and I would call it postural resets. So quadruped series, leg raise series, adduction, abduction, some mobility things, low skip, windmill, skip, scoop. It was a favorite, just things like that where it's slow. And then we would do some form of tempo, either a multi-directional tempo. It would be just a linear tempo. I'm a big believer in going front and backwards. Right.
So this is essentially a warm up, right?
Yeah.
All right. So then where is the effort level?
I would say it was like if I'm less than 75%.
All right. Which they're going to do anyhow, right?
Right.
So they're not going to overdo it.
Especially on Monday.
Yeah.
And some guys say, hey, you guys better do your work because Monday's going to be a beast. That shit doesn't work, especially with pro athletes. When they come in, we need to reset them. We got to get them used to the environment again, because I don't know if they went on a plane to a different, I don't know what they've been doing. I don't know if they've been, you just don't know. So I'm going to assume that they haven't done anything. And, I'm going to do that. So, aerobic work is one of the first things to go away, right? If you don't reinforce it. So at that point, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I got to hit them to get them back because football's aerobic. So what that would do is get a good sweat, they'd get a good lather. We'd go into the gym and do it that way. I'd give them a little transition, but they always knew the emphasis for that day.
Okay, then Tuesday,
That's when we hit them. Now, what's different here is we would do the same isolation stuff, but I wouldn't want a ton of time under tension, especially lower extremity. I just didn't want it. Now, over time, what I evolved to, I would do some form of Olympic at the front block, but I figured we were out on the field and we always did a reset with med balls. Okay. So this warm up, it would look very different, Dave, on that day. A little bit more traditional dynamic A, B, C series, all that stuff. And you would have sprinkled in there activation stuff, stability bounce, pogos across the field, lateral pogos, all this stuff. And yeah, so we would do that. We would do accelerations. And this was one of my head coach, Dan Quinn's awesome. One of his things was really about competition, so I wanted them to compete. We would have the measurables. We had Polar Team Pro and we used that. You wouldn't get as much on the acceleration day, but you could still see if they were bursting, right?
Yeah.
So you can measure it a little bit. So anyway, we would do that when they came in. We would speed squat. In general, it was, you have certain guys that do certain things by position, etc. But you'd speed squat. I would even deadlift, because acceleration with a deadlift, the intention from the bottom is to move it as hard and as fast as you can now. But what I did to mitigate the risk was double overhand. I would start them sumo, and I'd have them really sit back into it, pause, and intention. Single leg Bulgarian split squats with dumbbells. We would do some complex training, that type of thing. But again, the time under tension, if I wrecked them on Monday, their movement is going to be disoriented for the whole week. And they are there not to train with me. They're there to play football. So if they can't refine, if they can't refine specific movements on the field, then I'm not doing my job. I'm so fucking sore from squatting, so you have to always keep that in your mind. But that was the big emphasis on Tuesday. Second day. Third day was, I'm not married to the bench. I am married to the squat.
Yeah.
Pressing, I give variations, but I did not want to put a barbell. They would do some form of press on Monday, and it would be a big effort, max effort type of squat or a bench. So on Wednesday, I felt it was too close to put a barbell in their hands. So it was a lot of stability emphasis, rowing, sequencing rowing before benching for shoulder health. You're always doing scap stabilizers, neck, all that. And the movement on the field prior to this would be similar to what we did Monday, but a little different maybe with the tempo and some of the exercises.
Higher effort?
It would actually be lower effort. Lower effort. Because I knew if I had 2 good days of work, something had to give on that third day.
Yeah.
And so a lot of dumbbell work, higher rep type stuff, TRX, any suspension type training, anything that just got blood flow and was gonna help them stay healthy. Then Thursdays when we hit it.
I was gonna say I'm seeing what's happening here.
Yeah.
So Thursday the highest demand day.
Yes. So time under tension, hinge patterns for multiple reps, for our big guys, squatting heavy, and for our skill guys, it was max velocity. So usually that was in the form of a buildup. So here's the difference. The big guys, they would go outside, they would do a modified warm-up or modified movement prep, some med ball work. They'd come in, do all their activation, their isolation activation type stuff, and then they'd squat heavy. I didn't want to wear them out. At the end of that, we would do RDLs, some form of RDL. some form of single leg, get out. And then we were doing lactic capacity work with prowlers. So I put them in groups of 5, load up a little bit, and they were going for 10 yards as hard as they can. The skill guys, they were running and getting up to speed. So, and this is where I think using technology and using some of these things is great. So I tracked with all our skill guys and some of our linebackers, their speeds. We would hit almost 1.5, sometimes 2 times the amount of high speed yardage in the first 2 weeks that they would have in a practice. So they were running because the movement prep was on point, but I knew I had to get them up to speed. I had, because if they don't touch that speed before what the coaches are integrated, shit's going to happen. So I would tell them focus on technique, and it was all linear. We did some really intense COD stuff, but that part was, we built up that intensity over time.
Detail COD for those that may not know.
Change of direction. Yeah. So high intense, change of direction, and then linear development. Yeah. So that part of it, I mean, like, it was great.
And with the lineman, is the COD is hard?
So, we were a zone team. These guys had to move. So the COD was not the same. Yeah. Because I would do like a lateral bound with those guys with a hockey stop and go back, which is important for when they cut on the field. For the lineman, it was more positional, type of movement. Yeah. But I think it was unique in the sense that the movement prep portion of it, it's critical, Dave. These guys, the movement prep is critical. They hate to do it, but it's critical. You gotta warm up, and you gotta do specific warm-ups to things that you're going to use when you run. Yeah. So
now, did you find that a lot of the movements in the weight room and out of the weight room were movements that they're technically efficient at because they've already been doing them for the past 4 years or more?
Some are, some not.
Some not. Okay.
Yeah. And I think.
Well, what I'm wondering is, was a lot of your choice of exercise based upon that? Because if they've already had some exposure to that, right, your technical learning curve should decrease.
Right.
Was that part of the thought process? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And like, I'll give you an example, because everyone talks about this training transfer, right? So this lateral bound that we did, it would start at 20 yards with a hockey stop and then back. And then we cut it down over time, and it would turn into a sprint. Mike McDaniel, who's the head coach for the Miami Dolphins, was talking about an elite player, Julio Jones, about how he cut and using the inside edge of his foot and just everything was anatomically set, Dave. On the leg that wasn't weighted, you saw some valgus or but it wasn't weighted. But you saw him step and get out so fast. He's like, how do we get our guys to do this? So that was what we did. That's what we did. And we cut it down. The first 2 weeks all me, but then we integrate coaches. And Mike came to me, he goes, I don't know what the hell you did, but they're all doing that now. Which is huge. Oh yeah. That's a huge training transfer that you want. But if you don't touch it and touch it in some type of intensity and volume, is like, they're not going to get that transfer, So
how are they, outside of that, how are you actually defining what that transfer is?
But right. Like,
you see what I'm saying? Because it's dynamic correspondence transfer, whatever you want to carry over. That's that gray area,
Right.
where that art comes in.
Right.
So how are you defining that as the coach putting this together?
Movement. So in that particular case, movement efficiency, if you watch film, right. And like, I think having an open line of communication with the coach of what is happening and transpiring, and that constant communication is critical. So I would talk to the coaches and say, hey, are you seeing what you're looking for on this? Is he picking up that concept? Strength is strength. I had a great head coach who let me do and own it for that first 5 weeks. And then it would transition and we were sort of, doing that. But I think.
Would you say all things being equal, the stronger wins?
100.
Okay. So with that's got to be built into the training.
It's got to be built in,
to get stronger. So then the question then becomes, what are the metrics that you're using to determine that strength increase? And then how do you determine a weak point? Is it based upon the breakdown of whatever that metric you're using is, or is the weak point coming from the movement efficiency that the coach is telling you they're seeing?
Right.
Or is it both?
I think with the measurements that you're getting with it, I think you have an indicator right there, speed.
Yeah.
And that's measured. Total distance is measured. Strength increase. I would tell guys, I don't like when they come to you, especially in the league, you don't like, hey, what's your best? But what was that standard?
Yeah.
Like squatting or whatever.
So you don't know. Yeah.
You really don't know. So basically what I did is in the 5th week with the guys where strength was relevant, and it's all relevant. I'm just saying, like, for our big guys, we would work up and we would do clusters. So we were doing submax eccentric work, 6 to 8 seconds. We would build up intensity. And then I would drop that 5th week in the off-season program and they would do clusters. And I would sort of base my numbers off that. And that's where I got my number for. That's the first time.
Yeah.
And year to year for the guys who were there, I would have that recorded. So I would know, I would have an idea, but it was never concrete because there's so many other stressors.
Yeah. Well, is strength easier to measure than speed? Because at that level, how much is the speed really going to change?
Right.
You just don't want it to drop.
Right. I think strength is easier to measure because if they were just doing like track and field, right?
Yeah.
And it was set, that's not football. It's not. Football's chaotic and it's multiple routes. And this guy's making a decision to cut over here based off, on a choice route with a wide receiver. He's going right or left and he has to adjust. It's constantly braking and decelerating and then accelerating. So I think it's definitely easier to measure strength over time. And we did, we utilized VBT and we absolutely used that stuff, but I utilized it more on strength. Strength, when we were waving up, I used to call it charge the battery. Hey, we're going to charge the battery. I think what gets lost, Dave, is the guys don't understand how important strength is to speed. I think speed is the greatest expression, or one of the greatest expressions of strength. They need to be stable to maintain those things. And that's where that's really my goal with the skill guys. You have to be strong so you can attain the top speeds with good posture and do it over and over again.
Okay. So with the off season not being mandatory, what percentage of the guys were there?
We had some really good years. I would say, the first year was almost 100%. The second year was like 95, 90. And you had, you're always going to have some contract issues.
Yeah.
So that's tough. But it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So you make do with what you got and go from there, So yeah, we had a lot of buy-in.
That's a high percentage.
High percentage. And it changed the year after COVID and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the part of that is too, Dave, we wanted to make the environment welcoming, and the guys like coming in. I'm not, but I take training really serious. I don't take myself that serious.
So most of the guys lived around there?
They lived around there.
Okay.
Or they would come up and yeah. So the measurement part for me was more about them doing the things that were going to help them to support what they're doing on the field.
Yeah.
Because if you're testing all the time, you're not training. And I know it's nice to have numbers. It's nice, but it's hard. It's hard to get all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you one of my assessments each week, and I called it RAW. So it was readiness, aggression, and weight. So I used most of NFL clubs have a numbering system, and that numbering system, that's how they grade players when they're watching film. In this case, 6 is good, 7 is great, 8 was excellent, and 9 was rare. So I would have those on. So readiness was measured when you came in, your focus. And I would have guys watching, my assistants and I we would analyze this. At the end of the week, we would assess it, right? Now, aggression was their intent and the way, not necessarily what they lifted. Okay. It wasn't necessarily that, but it was how they dialed in when they came in to do what they had to do at a high level,
mm-hmm.
Because every week wasn't a quote unquote max effort, but were they doing the right things? And then weight is obviously, these are subjective, but the weight thing is what they did.
Yeah.
And not only weight, but speed. So if I put you in an environment where I'm asking you to hit top speeds, and, if we're doing buildups and I'm asking you to give me gas when you're going, then after that first week, I have a comparative number, because usually in the second week, you're going to do more, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had a situation like that pop up where a guy had his effort and his intent on that given day were, that first week it was good. Then it dropped off and we actually did more. So I could come back to him and you have a conversation,
mm-hmm. and
I would grade them and I would post them and I go, why did you get a 5? Well, look at your numbers last week, bro. And that's how you can use technology to coach, and coach effort, So
then when you get into the end season, how's this change?
Oh, yeah, this is when we were talking about some of these things like competitive max and training max. I was like, yeah, all right. So generally you play on Sunday in the NFL. That's max effort. It's max effort. The difference is it's max effort of every system in your body. And from week to week, if you're playing a really good team, it might take you beyond, right? So, like Louis, you guys, how many hours do you take between intense bouts of lifting?
Mm-hmm.
48 to 72. I was adamant about training on Wednesday, like a main training session on Wednesday, because Monday they're still okay, but Tuesday's like they got in a train wreck because now the Toradol's worn off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, so I knew I had to give, but I had to wake them up on Wednesday. So how do I wake them up? Squatting, that type of thing. And that's what we did. And we would wave up, it was good. Guys liked it. I had to sell it.
Yeah.
You had to sell it. You had some guys that wanted to do some stuff on Monday that was different. And I get that. Everyone's different. I was always open to that. But I always said, hey man, just I want you activated for practice. Because I would always have them lift before practice.
Okay. So then how would that pivot if it's a Thursday game?
Thursday game, taper. You just want them to feel good. If they felt good enough to do something, I would just say, hey man, like all that was planned in.
Now, if it's a Thursday game, so say it's Sunday, Thursday, are they also playing that next Sunday, or do they have a longer stretch?
Yeah, that's nice because they call it mini bye.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get that weekend. So it sucks on the front end. Your body's going to feel like, you might feel better as you get closer to that competition. But yeah, it sucks. It does.
Well, I can see a benefit on that longer.
Oh yeah.
Because now you have more time, but they have more time to they're smashing heads.
Yeah.
Over a 4-day period twice.
Yeah.
But then they get 10.
Yeah. You get thrown a bone. It's nice. They call it mini bye, and it's time to heal up. And, I encourage guys, hey man, like normally you'll have them come in Friday. They got to check in.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'll tell you, it's nice. It's nice for the coaches too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just reset and, it's good.
All right. So then what's the difference of the mentality with them than the collegiate athlete? Because now they're being paid. Well, I guess collegiate athletes now are getting paid. So I wonder how that's going to kind of play itself out.
Oh yeah.
But how's that dynamic change things?
Well, as far as like, we used to, at the places I'd been, we would have it where they would train 2 days after, and it wouldn't correspond with practice like I did in Atlanta or with an NFL team. But I think I learned that along the way. All the teams I did, you would have a main lift, maybe Tuesday and Thursday. You get 2, and it just varied from place to place. When I got to Atlanta, I really started putting things in terms of like, it's just like training. Football is just like training. It's just a very specific type. And when you look at it, and Dave, I did this tracking with Polar, and I showed, so in off-season program, in OTAs, you have the first 2 weeks are with me. You have 3 weeks where coaches are integrated. And we did something unique there where we did a gradual time allotment to specificity. So they were with me, and then we chunk it with the coaches where they were doing individual drills. And then over that 3-week period, time would decrease with me and it'd go more towards them.
Yeah. So it's not an abrupt.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And it kept us healthy, and then you got the 4 weeks. So, what were we getting back? I'm sorry.
Basically their buy-in is where we're getting to.
Yeah. Yeah. They have to have, with the college thing, like I think they're going to trust you more because they don't have as many people out there. It's about educating them.
They don't have a choice either.
They don't have a choice, right?
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to go out and spend money on your own guru,
Mm-hmm.
So, the buy-in is from educating them and telling them the why, and I think that's important, especially today, even with younger athletes. That's it.
Well, there are gurus that they could be working with.
Oh yeah.
So how do you work that
in the NFL?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't get in the way. And I had a situation before where, it's hard because, it's not hard for me. When they're gone, they're gone. I can't control what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I can educate them. I could say, hey, when you're with your guy, just try to hit this. This is where you're lagging. This is where we need to improve. So sort of target that. It doesn't bother me because, I mean, it's free will. I don't want someone telling me what I should do, you know? So I don't take offense to it at all or anything. I try to communicate with them if they want to. I've had guys reach out to me, but look, some of the guys that they work with, they're tight, and I don't want to get in the way of that relationship.
Yeah.
It's hard because, like, sometimes they're like family, and I'm not trying to get in that way. When you're here, we're going to do what we have to do.
Well, that's the odd part, right? Because it's rare, but it's there. That guy may be the only consistent. This person's going to have their entire time in the league, which may span over 3 or 4 teams.
Right.
Because they never know.
Right.
So that guy may actually know that person better than what their coach does. It's rare. That's usually not the case. Right. But it could be the case.
Yeah.
Which would be an asset then.
Yeah.
Where, the opposite case is the guy's a complete idiot.
Right.
And that well, I'll ask you, does that happen more times than not now compared to what it would have been 10 years ago? Because 10 years ago, that was a mess.
Yeah. I don't know, Dave.
Yeah.
I think the guys, again, it's a relationship that, like, I think every one of these guys has a guy that they bounce stuff off of, or they go for, they might call him a body guy or whatever. It's great, man. Take care of your body. Your body is your business. So I'm not getting in the way of that.
Yeah.
When it comes to, I had a guy who was getting dry needling 3 times a week. And they were doing the total body each week. And I'm like, dude, dry needling's a silver bullet. It can be really effective, but now it's not going to be as effective when you need it if you're constantly subjecting yourself. I said, hey, I worked with them and I just said, hey, why don't you taper off this a little bit and really focus on this? So that you can get these, and the intention is good. The guy just wants to get better. He wants to, he's trying to take care of his body. And that's where the education piece comes in. I think it's, the body doesn't work that way. Focus on sleep. Are you getting 8-9 hours of sleep, bro?
Yeah. So how's this change if you have, because you have the newer pros coming in, right? And then you have the veterans that have been there 7-8 years.
Right.
Those are 2 entirely different bodies. One's been through war.
Yeah.
The other one doesn't really know what they're going to go through just yet.
You have to integrate the vets with the rookies.
Okay.
And they have to talk. Now, you're going to have some, one of the coaches call them force multipliers, the guys that do everything right. We had a program when I was there where you would have, they called it Falcon U. They might still do it. I don't know, but it was all about being a pro. So how to take care of your body. We're going to have one-on-ones and a group meeting with the nutritionist, talking about sleep, talking about how you handle your money, all that stuff. So, but when it's coming from someone that's a leader who's also a player and had success in the league, it means more.
Yeah.
So those guys, connecting them is a big deal, So, and we can help facilitate that process.
Generally, is that interpersonal dynamic good, right? Because if the life in the league is just a few years,
right?
Somebody's been playing in the league for 8 or 9.
Yeah.
How much investment do they really want to make?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
No.
Optimally, they'd want to make the biggest investment because it's going to make for the better output.
Right.
But there's the reality that this fucker may not be here next year. So why should I bother?
Right. And I think that's once you dial that in, like, look, it depends on the culture you're building too,
Yes.
and the individual. So I think, we had some really good pros, vets that would step up and take the time to talk to them. And then, some guys are like, nah, I'm good, man. Or it could be a guy, hey, I'm good. That guy's trying to take my job.
Well,
So,
that's true as well.
Yeah. So it's there's such a there is selfishness everywhere. We know that, and it is what it is. But
well, would you say part of that's why they're there?
No question.
Yeah.
No question. And I and that's I love that they want. I had a guy, he would ask me every question. Why are we doing this? I love that. Some guys hate it. I love it, because now we're creating dialogue between us. We're getting to know each other better. If you have an issue, I'm not taking this shit personal. Talk to me about it. I don't know how many people really do that. I don't know, but people adapt different ways. Something might not be working for them. Like, it's up to me to adjust. That's me as a coach. I got to adjust something. I can set up, I had a guy come up to me, Dave. He said, dude, you're really good at what you do because you reach 80% of the guys, the other 20%, but you're reaching people. I said, well, that's good. I'll take that percentage, because I don't especially at the pro level, you're not going to reach everyone. It's the same reason I hire coaches based more off personality than, hey, I'm an expert in this. Well, we all got to if you're a strength coach, you sort of got to be an expert in everything, but where's your personality? Can you go to a more reserved guy, more introverted guy, and have, maybe connect with them because you're similar, I don't know. I think there's something to that,
Yeah. So then when you're trying to staff, you're going to staff in those areas where you're weak.
Right. I would say this, I'm introverted. I'm not I like to read. I like to do my thing, but at the same time, hey, when it's time to go, I know it's time to go. Got to lead. So, yeah, places or people that have had just different experiences, that can touch other people and reach them. I think it's critical.
So over your time coaching at all these different levels, where would you say, because you mentioned standards earlier, where would you say that your standards and values are that is going to be integrated wherever you go?
Yes.
I mean, if you end up in high school, those standards and values are going to be there. If it's back in the NFL, they're going to be there as well, because now they've been established and reinforced.
Yeah.
They can change, but where would you say they are now?
I say I can only have my standards as high as the place I'm at. As far as working in this past job that I had, we had limited resources. So you got to do the best you can with what you have and make it and own it. The standard of coaching will never drop. It's high standard, that won't. And when it's, Dave, it's mostly in coaching, especially in football, you're not at the top of the priority list.
Yeah.
You're not. Your time with the athlete for most coaches, it's okay, when they're going to lift? At the end of the meeting, after they said everything, when can we lift?
Well, at the collegiate level, wouldn't the athlete be spending more time with the strength coach?
More time.
Now, in the NFL, that's probably not going to be the case, or is it?
It depends on. I sold I knew that between intense bouts of activity, you need time, right? So, like, that was my big push when I was in Atlanta, was to train in the morning. Number one, it makes them more alert for meetings. They're going to be more efficient and they're going to pay attention in meetings better. And I knew they're going to get some rest. Now we have to reintegrate when they come up and get them going. So I think for me, like, communication on the front end about that and stressing the importance of it and showing a coach how it benefits them, that's critical. If you have that time to do that, right? So yeah, I think it's getting ahead of it and showing them how it will benefit them, essentially, how it'll benefit the athlete and the coach, the position coach, defense, whatever. This is going to benefit you because there'll be more alert meetings. Oh, that makes sense. Whatever, but no.
With your psychology side and visualization and just mindset,
yeah,
how are you able to integrate that or with those players at that high level?
Yeah,
because this is different. You know what I'm saying? Where
yeah,
it's going to benefit all players, but I think the buy-in might change.
Yeah,
the higher level they get.
Yeah, yeah. If again, you're dealing with external people coming at you at the higher levels, it's going to be more criticism. Most guys just don't know how to breathe. Diaphragmatic breathing and resetting and knowing what you control. So I've had countless players that have come in high stress times, and we've worked on that closed door. And again, I think the higher you get, the more this is important. You know it, I know it.
Mm-hmm.
And, people say holistic and people sort of, they roll the eyes. But when I say holistic, I'm talking about mind-body connection and doing things, maybe resetting or helping a guy see something they're missing out of their routine. And if you can bring awareness to that and they start doing it and it improves, that's a huge deal, especially if you're working with a person who's going to touch the ball 100% of the time when you're on offense. Like, they have a lot of control of what happens. So just dealing with stressors and how to just how to deal with it in a positive way. And it's all cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's also doing some things that they just might not be aware that you're doing, and you're bringing it to their attention.
Such as
just they're not taking enough time for themselves. They're all over the place. I got to do this. Hold up, dude. What can you eliminate? Because you're here for ball. You have to control that. The power of no. I had that with a lot of people, or their sleep disruption. Working on, I learned in grad school something called tapping. So I'd work on that, and it's coupled with, breathing.
What is tapping?
So it's just different areas where, it's almost like a distraction, Dave. Progressive muscle relaxation, where you're feeling what tension is, and then you're releasing to signal to your brain, hey, this is tension. I need to, that type of stuff. I took multiple courses in hypnosis, advanced hypnosis, all that. And, people, it's a super focus, and it's a reset for your body and your mind. And, if you can give those tools to these guys to integrate when they're feeling those emotions, it's going to help them perform.
So you start with the breathing, because it's I get asked a lot about mindset, and everybody wants visualization, right? So they want to be able to like close their eyes and picture exactly how everything's going to work, and they don't understand that's a process.
Yeah.
Where I'll tell people declutter your life first.
Yeah.
Right. So you get those controllables out of the way, where breathing is important, right? But that would be one thing that I don't tell them that I probably should, because it would start there, right? With the physical breathing, tapping, and those type of things, because J.M. Blakely said on one of the podcasts that when people talk about visualization, a lot of times they don't realize they already do it. It's called daydreaming. Then it's just kind of tapping in, to that same thing. But if they can't control the breathing or relaxing, they're not going to be able to get there anyhow.
Right.
But that's where they want to go.
Yeah.
They want to go to a sleep deprivation tank, lay in the tank and be able to picture the perfect world, and then not realize, I'm stuck in the tank for an hour and I can't get out, and their brain's just going ape shit because they don't know. You see what I'm saying? They don't know where to start. So does that mindset aspect filter out the higher they get? Because it to simplify it all, it's just confidence, right?
Right.
If you're to break it all down to the basic variable, it's confidence. And so if they're at that higher level, I am going to assume that their confidence would be higher than a high school player.
Right.
Right.
And it's like, if it bothers them, I've always felt like, hey, like, come and talk to me. Like, if you're talking to me about it, just talking about something is their number one catharsis. That's going to help, just talking about it. So the higher you go, those guys are confident,
Yeah. Well, where I'm kind of going here is that's one variable of physical performance.
Right.
Right. But it's one variable that's moving that is a determining factor if they go from one level to the next. So if it's the high school kid that's listening to this, they should be working on that.
Yes.
Because that's the constant variable that improves at each level, where the physical attributes may not improve that much from high school to college as far as their squat, bench.
Right.
It's going to improve, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, you may get somebody right out of high school with a 500 bench, and then they're in the NFL, they're still benching 500.
Right.
But the confidence, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Where if they can learn how to focus, right? And that's would be where the confidence comes from, right? So it all kind of breaks down into that.
Yeah.
And that's the aspect, because we were talking a little bit earlier about the future of the strength and conditioning coach, where you have coaching and then you have programming.
Right.
They're two different things. The program matters,
right?
But the coach has to implement program, right? Because it's AI will be able to make a way better program. It probably can now.
Yeah.
With the right prompting, it can. So the programming is going to get replaced.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It's. I think so. Right. Because there's so much information.
Yeah.
That AI can process.
Yeah.
To be able to put together to whiteboard everything that you whiteboarded.
Right.
Better.
Really?
Right. We're going there because it's taking everything that and everybody else has known over a period of time, putting it together, being able to put out. But that coaching can't be done.
No.
Right. Yeah, so
no doubt.
That's if I look to the future, then I'm going to kind of ask, what you say. If I look to the future, I think that's the difference maker.
Yeah.
Is authenticity and the ability to actually coach. Where the programming part is almost going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of the guesswork will be taken out, but there's still that art and there's still that coaching, where I think that's a good thing. Right. Yeah. Because then the nuts and the tools that you spend all those years trying to acquire. It's funny, right?
Yeah.
Because you spend all this time trying to acquire and learn the best programming, the best exercises, the best modalities, and all this other kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, as we move forward, that's going to be pretty much available to anybody.
Yeah.
But at the same pace, on the other side, was the ability to coach, to read people, to read individuals, to work with their stressors, their weak points, connection, all the other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That skill is harder to learn than that skill. You see what I'm saying?
No question.
You know, so it's frustrating to see a lot of those things, you know, being studied to death and all the other kind of thing. But those things aren't what's going to make the difference.
Like the technology part is real, and I'm not anti-technology at all. I like looking at stuff. Again, I want something that's going to give me something to help these guys perform.
Yeah.
If you don't have an intervention lined up or something to help them, you know, from that data, what are you doing? I'll tell you this. So you go into a building, coaching building, whatever. If it doesn't matter where it's at, when you see a player, phone, iPad, they watch film on iPads, right? TV, film, they're always connected to a screen. I took a TV out when I was in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
We had 2 TVs. There were 2 by the limited cardio pieces we had. And I took it out because we weren't using it. Well, don't you want to show videos? No. I want them focused. It's kinesthetic awareness. It's about connection with people. For the 45 minutes they're in here, I need them all about getting their body better. That's where the focus needs to be. They're getting all that screen time in the locker room, in the meeting room, watching film. They don't need it in here. They don't. Let's work on something we need to get better at. You have to communicate on the field. There's no screen there when you're doing that.
Yeah.
So it's like that part, like they you know, my one buddy looked at me that I coached with, like, man, you really don't want to use that TV. Hell no, I don't want to use that shit. Get it out of here.
Well, like I said, that's they don't have the screens on the field.
Right.
Right. And that I don't want to say it's a distraction, right? Because that's their plays and all the other kind of stuff that are in there. But if the coach can't coach, obviously they're not a coach, right? And so it's the technology can help that coach actually coach more, right? Because if it's less time that you have to actually implement and put all the X's and O's together, that can be decreased.
Yeah.
So then your metrics are there. Then you have more time.
Yeah.
For the connection and
for the real stuff.
For the real stuff to actually coach.
No doubt.
Now, if the aspiring coach doesn't build that skill set, they're fucked.
They're fucked.
Right. So there's an overemphasis on the X's and O's, right?
Yeah.
And an underemphasis on the actual coaching part.
Yeah. Dave, it's a people profession. And it's a helping profession and it's a people profession. So I hear some guys tell me they go in, they plug their name into the thing and there's the workout. Okay. I made it a point when any guy walked into my room, I was greeting them. And I do this, you know, I called it the warrior handshake or whatever. Can't shake like mere mortals. Still jamming you with affirmations. You know, I'm giving it to you, man.
Yeah.
You know, all the time. But I guess, like, I don't know. I just, that for me, like, that connection piece, I think it's really being missed. I just do. It's just connections, affirmations, the real stuff. And, that's, yeah.
But I would see that as opportunity.
Yeah.
For the aspiring coach to double down on, because somebody's going to have to do that, right? Because I can buy a book, right? So I can buy a book on investing. It can be the best book in the world. Go to Amazon or wherever, just buy the book. Then I have the book.
Yep.
I didn't read the book. So that's that program, right? Okay. Now I can read the book as a person could just read the program, but not apply anything from the book. So a lot of strategies in the books, but I don't apply any of it. And then you no difference is made.
Right.
The difference is only made when the application is actually put into place.
Yeah.
Which can work or not work.
Yeah.
Right. Both are good.
Right.
Because both determine the next path forward. So they can have that workout.
Right.
Right. It can be the best workout ever.
Right.
And they can even do it. But if they don't do it with the right intent.
Right.
Yeah. And focus or all these other things, then it's subpar.
And back to I jumped around a little bit. I apologize, but that, what I found with this internal load from Polar, you see when guys train alone or they train in a small group, it's different. You track it different. It's more intense when you're with a bigger group, right? When you're competing, right? So I can have what I saw through this Polar data was the first day of each cycle, you saw the intensity change and the output change depending on whatever cycle you're on, right? Or whatever. Your intent was different. Once you throw a football out there and you have coaches out there and people who are controlling the time you play, it's a lot different. It's live fire. It's going. And then I guess circling back with what you're saying is, if I can take away all that stuff and really focus on you and have it as something that's gonna help athletes, and I can focus on connecting with you and getting you to do it with better intent, it's going to be better product for everyone. I think I don't fear, some people are fearful of this stuff. I'm not fearful of it. I just want it to make sense and make my job better to reach my athletes so they're in a better spot at the end of the day,
Well, I think you just pointed out one critical thing that comes into the coaching, because if the intent changes between training alone and training in a group, right?
Yeah.
Then over that training block, sometimes it's alone, sometimes it's in a group.
Right.
The stressor on that person, while may seem to be the same, isn't.
Right.
Right. Where I guess you could say a deload could be just do it alone.
Yeah.
Right. Because then that's going to kind of lower that intent or rise. But if it's bouncing all over the place, then the coach is the one that has to kind of see,
right,
what's going on with that.
Right.
Because it can play both ways, to where if it's always alone and the intent's never good, well, they're not going to get better.
Right.
If it's always in a group and the intent's too high, but the coach doesn't know how to dial it back, they're going to not get better.
So this happened, and it was just my observation of a given day. We used to do this thing called Friday Night Lights, and the buildup for that week was you're going to have more people here. It was always in training camp. You went to a local high school, and they had the lights on, whatever. Well, the one year we had it up by us, but we didn't have lights.
Mm-hmm.
We had it at the facility, so they were going to have it at 5. Okay, 5 o'clock, and it was Friday. Well, Atlanta's a beast with traffic, so the buildup all week was going to have more people here than you've ever had. It's going to be big. It's going to be intense. It's going to be great. And I'm sitting there going, it's Friday. We're up here. We're pretty far from the city. I don't think there's going to be many people showing up. Long story short, and guys came out, and you just saw this. There wasn't many people there, Dave, and you saw just them flatten out. Like, you saw it. I saw more guys on the ground. I saw all this stuff. Like, just, it wasn't a great practice, is what I'm getting at. Because the buildup was there. These guys like to perform in front of people. And when that's, when that's taken away, it's like, or the buildup's there and then it's taken away even before you get out there. It's like, man, I saw a direct effect of that.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the 2 decades that you've been coaching?
Definitely the integration of technology. I think that's one. I think coaches are actually they're open more to listening to people who, in my opinion, there's a lot better information out there and guys are using it more. I think, I think there has been a big shift on the mental health side. We got people knowing that that's a big part, which I like. I think sometimes there's been a regression in as far as like intensity with things, where everyone's they overthink things. And, sometimes, in the sport of football, it's a reactive sport. So sometimes I think that's not a great thing. But I think for the most part, it's been good progression. People are doing better things. They're doing more, for the people, for the guys they're working with. They have more access to information and things are improving that way. But that's just my take. I think it is improving, but there's some things that are on the back burner where, I don't think everyone's being as, say this, the part of being physical culture, tough is not as prevalent as it once was.
Is it with the players on the field at the top end?
I think that, but I think there's a growing concern, about some of the stuff with the brain, CTE, things like that. So, and I'm not saying that, look, there's a lot of tough guys in the NFL. I'm not saying that at all. But I think there's more of a hesitation because of that, because of the long-term effects, but again, when you sign up for that, that's why you make a lot of money, too.
Well, what I'm wondering is, are the players at the highest level better today than they were 20 years ago?
I don't know about that. I don't know. They might be. I think that's hard to say, because I think as you evolve, in general, players are going to be bigger, faster, and stronger than they were, 20 years ago. They take information, they've learned from it, and they assimilate, and they do well. But I think some of the things that are being missed out of that might be some of the, grit, like, because it's happening in high school where people, they're not pushing through and doing maybe some stuff that they don't think makes sense, like straining their ass off on a squat. Or
what I'm wondering is, will those in high school, the kids that aren't doing that, are they going to make it to the next level?
If they're not doing it, they're not going to make it. They're not going to make it.
Yeah.
And
that's why I asked, at that highest level, where's that? Right. Because speed, strength, I don't know about injury rates, compared to 20 years ago.
Right.
I don't, maybe lower. I don't know. Different, probably different injuries than they were 20 years ago.
Right.
So they're learning, you know. So the way I kind of process it is the highest level across any sport is higher than it's ever been.
Right.
But the lowest level is now lower than it's ever been. In other words, the middle, seems like with everything, right? Yeah, the middle is being, you know, taken away.
Yeah.
Right. And that could fall into kind of what you're talking about. There is the ones who do have that will move on and play in college and move on, play in the NFL. The ones that don't will fall through. The fear would be nobody moves on.
Right.
But that's not possible. Right. Because there's a financial aspect of the schools need the kids on the field to generate money. You know, it still falls down into that where we don't know. I mean, will it get to a point where it gets so bad where now the college players all suck? You know, that would be, I guess, the fear. Yeah. But I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either.
Because there's always going to be those outliers. That make it to that next level, which could be some of the kids that you were talking about. You know, they come from a little bit harder background. You know, that kind of gets them through there.
Yeah. And Dave, I think I've come across so many like really interesting individuals and the guys, the commonalities I see with guys who are successful. They're resilient. They're tough. Now they might not do this, but like they're tough. They can take criticism. They learn, and they keep refining, you know, these things that are going to make them elite at whatever it may be. You know, people talk about how the speed of the NFL versus college, it's faster, right? It's because everyone's more efficient at the tasks that they're doing. They've refined that over time. An offensive lineman, a D lineman, they become more efficient at the task, and they're specialists. They're just they know exactly where to put their hand or foot placement. There's no wasted steps, you know, and I think that's, you know, I think it gets overlooked how intelligent these guys are, you know, how intelligent they are with their bodies and how refined. I mean, it's impressive, man. It really is. It's impressive.
Well, I think it's, you know, to kind of go back to what you were saying is I always kind of see it as like the top percent's always going to be the top percent.
Yeah.
Right. That doesn't change. It's never going to change. It's always going to kind of be there. But it's kind of up to the people with that top percent to be the role models for the heroes, for the ones to kind of look up to. And if I've seen any difference in that, it's who they're looking up to. Those people aren't as visible as they should be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the visibility comes to the ones that don't necessarily have the attributes that you're speaking about.
Yeah.
You know, the media exposure, the popularity and all that stuff, it's going there.
Right.
Right. But top 10% is still going to be the top 10%.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's kind of up to, and I can say this, as I said earlier, even in the strength and conditioning profession, you can take veterans like yourself that know the shit.
Yeah.
They produce results. The injury rates prove that.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's one metric in the NFL that you need to look at, it's probably that.
Yeah.
Because if they're hurt, they can't play.
100%.
Fact of the matter.
And like you said before, how do you measure, how you look at that? Well, not even just the injury report, but looking at what transpired. Like, did they have any things that were nagging over that time? Because if it's nagging, it's taking away from their ability to focus on the field to do their job. You know, same with injuries. If they're not doing their job, they're not getting better. They're not getting more efficient. So for me, the most important thing is making sure we're doing the right stuff to get them on the field. And if the likelihood of them improving as a player is if they're practicing. It's not working with me. It's what they're practicing on the field. That's really what's going to help them become elite, you know? So,
yes. So see,
yeah,
in a way, some things haven't, the more they change, the more they stay the same.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Because as you were coming up, you're digging for all the best information. You're trying to filter through all this stuff, and it wasn't easy to figure it out
no
because
question.
all the stuff that was front and center,
Yeah,
Muscle and Fitness, Flex Magazine, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
All that
yeah,
is the glitzy glamour shit that's pulling everybody to that. But then over a period of time, you realize that's not real.
right.
You know,
Yeah,
the real is hard to find, right? Where with the coaching profession, training profession, and all the other professions, the fake is easy to see.
yeah,
It's over amplified,
yeah,
right? Because you see it everywhere. But the real, you have to dig deep to be able to find, and it's going to be harder to find.
yeah,
You know, so the best coaches, as I said earlier, are the ones that are in the gym, on the track, on the field. You know, they're not online posting all kinds of shit because they don't have the time, because they're actually doing the work.
right, right.
So the aspiring coach, instead of digging through all the materials, you know, that you had to do, have to seek out who's really doing the work and getting the results,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they're not going to have 8 million followers.
Amen.
You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So
yeah,
that's where it stayed, you know, it's still hard
yeah,
to find the information that's going to make you exceed.
right.
Same way it was before. It's just now different because of the over amplification. Instead of Flex Magazine and all those other things, right?
Yeah,
It's the social media or the media portraying certain strength coaches because of their physical characteristics or how well they can yell at somebody or
right.
some shit like that.
Yeah,
You know, that's what draws it in. And then, but that's not real,
it's not real.
right? So it's, you see what I'm saying? It's not that much different. It's just a different way of vetting.
Yeah, yeah. I think I I've always and I've always tried to find the guy who gets great results, and
That's not easy though.
it's not.
It never was.
It never was.
It's
It never
supposed to
was.
be that way.
And Dave, I'm with like, and look, I don't want to go on a rant, but I see some of this shit out there. I saw a guy, elite football player. They had average bands hooked up to a bar with kettlebells, like 36 kilos, something like that. And he looked like he was doing a fucking polka dance, going back and forth. And I'm watching this kettlebell almost hit him. Someone sent it to me, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, have you ever talked to the person who did that first and the intention of why they did it? What are they trying to get? What are you trying to accomplish by doing this? And this guy, you're putting this guy at risk, even if it's a bruise.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's worth millions. What the fuck is he doing that for? You know, it's getting harder because there's more shit out there, you know, and yeah, I you know, yeah.
So what advice would you have for aspiring coaches to filter through the bullshit?
Look at the people. I would say look at the people who've had success in given sport, and look who they're working with. You know, a great friend of mine, his name's Matt Delancey. He was a strongman competitor. This guy, he he's been a part of so many national championships at the University of Florida, track and field, swimming. Ryan Lochte gave this guy a gold medal. A gold medal. Hey, here, man. Because he knew. Like, that's a guy, when I worked at Florida, I would talk to all the time. Because that's a resource.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the people that are having success and doing it, you know, doing it humbly. You know, I know Matt has Instagram. I think he has Twitter and stuff, but like a guy like that, like he's he's a wealth of knowledge. And not only a wealth of knowledge, like, not even talking about training, but how to interact with a coach and how to get a guy to perform at his best when his best is required. And talking, I mean, that to me is like his secret sauce, really. I mean, he does great training day. He's really good on the floor, but just like, even just in his communication with his coaches and being on the same page. Because at the end of the day, that's what this shit comes down to, you know, like that. But yeah, like guys like that, that's what I would look for, you know. Like even before, like I see people doing band distraction, all this stuff, you know. Dick Hartzell, you know, he was the guy that started all that.
Mm-hmm.
Like finding guys, it's getting harder and harder to find. But I think, you know, just seeing where the results and building your network, I think building your network around people that know, and that means getting out and not sitting behind a computer and going and seeing and talking to people. The lost art of that, you know. So I think, especially for young coaches, you got to get uncomfortable. Be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Get uncomfortable. You're going to get your ass kicked once in a while. Not literally, but that's what it's about. And then coming back and seeing what you learn from that. So
where does the children's book play into all this?
Yes. So I think I was telling Matt before, so when I was working with the military, there was a pond right across from our house in it was Pooler, Georgia. So right outside of Savannah. And there were 2 ducks, and those ducks were they were best of friends hanging out, right? And so we were in Hilton Head, my wife and I, my future wife. We weren't married at the time, but I'm coming back. I had a couple pops in me, and I go, "Hey, babe, I'm gonna write a children's book about those ducks, right?" And she's like, "Okay, babe, whatever you say." So I always had this. I had in my office the board of knowledge. Just throw stuff up there. So this concept was up. The significance, Dave, is one duck was black, the other was white. My wife happens to be African American. So this concept, down the road, I named the one duck after my dad, and the other Curtis Jones Jr., who passed away, and they both passed away in the same year. My dad and Curtis. So the typical strength coach type stuff. When you're going in and you're looking at it, usually when you're looking at movement, you're looking from the bottom up, you know. So it goes through and it talks about the differences of the ducks, and but how we're similar. So the book's about not judging people by the color of their eyes or the color of their skin, you know, and or the color of their feathers in this case. But yeah, that's what it's about. And I did all the drawings. So I did all the illustrations. I was a little frustrated in this last job with some of the stuff because we were talking about standards before. Mm-hmm. And I felt like my standard was being affected by some of the others that don't take it as serious.
Mm-hmm.
So I made it positive. So I taught myself how to use pastels and charcoal. And I did that in about a 3 or 4 month period. I sent it off to a publisher, and they accepted all my drawings the first time around. It's I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah. And when's this going to come out?
January, February. It's in print right now. So it's a pain in the ass. It's a pain in the ass, but you know what? Yeah, it's cool. Like I'm thankful that I've had some time, because I don't know if I'd ever finish this project if I was coaching in some of the areas, that some of the missed opportunities, we would say.
Mm-hmm.
But doing this book has really helped me. You know, and it's going to be something cool for my son and my family, you know, but the message is good. It's a good message. So, yeah. And, you know, I do some dry erase art. I did this in coaching. We'd have a Friday workout, gun show, you know, guys love it. They want to do it. So I embraced it. Dave, I had a huge whiteboard in the gym, and I did Thor, Predator, like, I'll share it with you, but every Monday I would erase it. I take a picture of it, I erase it. And it's all subliminal messaging. Your best is required every week. And it doesn't matter what it was. Now it's gone. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I would, at the end of the year, the guys who were consistent and did it, I'd give them a poster. And that's the one thing about these guys, like the NFL guys. They're big kids, man. They're still competing. And you got to keep it light. You know, it can't be all, it's got to be light. They got to, you know, again, I take training very serious. I don't take myself that serious, you know, so we could chop it up. When it's time to work, it's time to work, you know, and I'm gonna coach shit out of you, but at the same time, I want it to be inviting.
Yeah. Well, that's where you get the connection, though.
That's it. And I'll be honest, like, this last gig I had, it was cool, but it wasn't the same. When you're in a building and you're there and you have an office and it's like not a temporary building,
mm-hmm.
It's different, you know? So, yeah, it's for me, you know, I'm seeking that. I want that because I'm a better version of myself when I am in that scenario, you know, but I'm thankful. I finished this thing. I'm thankful, man. So,
were there any topics you wanted to cover that I didn't go over?
I don't think so. I want to say personally, thank you for all that you guys have done. It's awesome, man. Like, you guys really, I've been reading and using your information forever. And you guys put out great stuff. It's real. And I don't know how many people thank you, but thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate that.
It's helped a lot. So,
any final thoughts?
Yeah. Strong. I always say strong. That's it. Thanks for having me, bro.
All right. Thanks for coming out. This has been great.
Yeah. Thanks,
all right.
Dave.
We're done.
Yeah.
If we're lowering our weight, passive tension is usually coming from a couple of places. Passive tension will be coming from titin, which is a very large protein molecule that runs through the sarcomere. And we also have the slow detachment rates that are happening between actin and myosin. So you have that combination